no matter how bad it is, just like when he lost the debate to Kamala Harris in September of 2024, he'll claim victory. But I think there's the logic. The intelligence briefings were wrong, and now he's stressed out about how to end the thing.
Hogan, Giddy, welcome to Uncensored. I think the last time I physically saw you was in the bowels of the Churchill war rooms in London.
Churchill's bunker, yep.
Yeah,
100%.
I was just thinking that when I interviewed President Trump in his last term, and it was a great interview, actually, and I gave him one of Churchill's hats as a souvenir, which he loved. But an ironic setting for our last meeting, because, of course, he's been saying that Keir Starmer's no Churchill because he hasn't stepped up in the way he wants the UK to step up, and so on. You were a former Trump White House press aide. One of the big problems I have with what's been going on is the really contradictory messaging that's been coming out here, not just from President Trump, but a lot of his senior aides. To what Anthony just said, we all heard what came out of Marco Rubio's mouth when he was asked why did
with this shit. I keep saying they're trying to stonewwash this. They can't admit that, the Americans are evil, that Trump is evil, that Marco Rubio is a shill, is a shyster, that they're lying through their teeth. They can't admit that, bro. Like, what are you doing? The most right-winger can tell. Come on. If the Groypers are noticing, it just means that you're not even, you're lying to yourself. Nah, it's not lying. You're being paid to lie, most likely. What Trump always said, you got to make a deal with these people. You got to make yourself, you got to make it a risk. I don't remember the quote that Trump said, but he basically said, you have to make it a risk for these people to avoid the deal. You got to strike a deal where they lose something. You got to make yourself, not irreplaceable. I forget the quote. But the point is that they need you. And I think that's what happens with Piers Morgan. And I think that's all the deals with, Mossad, the CIA are done. These people that shill for them, they need them. It's a relationship. Okay.
Military to find out what could potentially happen. These things are all gamed out in real time. The President of the United States, though, I think did clearly state at the beginning of this what he wanted to accomplish, and he has largely accomplished that. You have many people on the right saying, this is done, so go ahead and get out now. And they were clear. You did not want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. That's virtually impossible now, even after bombing the fort.
You see what I mean? Like, this is nonsense. Anyone with a brain could decipher this. But they're not using their brain. They're paid to not use it. If you can't tell, then, well, for the rest of your life, you're going to be psyoped into working against your interest.
How long are you going to stay there, and what do you want to happen after you accomplish the things you state you want accomplished? And those things have been done. So for me, you mentioned the people in the streets. Will they rise up and try and take back their government? I sure hope so. Because there are, 90 million people there? Those folks should be the ones out there chanting in the streets and getting rid of the IRGC, et cetera. I don't know if that's going to happen. But let's be clear here as well.
But he's hoping for it. This guy's an idiot. The first thing that's going to happen to these countries that open themselves to the banking central system is their quality of life significantly goes down. Look at the U.S. state right now. The investment bankers have destroyed America. They obliterated it. And he's saying, Iran is going to be so much better when the banking systems, with the Rockefellers, with BlackRock, is going to swoop in and save them all. Oh, praise BlackRock, praise the... Oh, shit, no. Sorry, Burrito went away. We got Mouse. Well, he's good enough. But yeah, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. But yeah, he's not chilling. They're demons, basically. They sold their soul, and they don't care the repercussions of what happens when they spread the word, spread propaganda towards the masses, especially old people that watch Piers Morgan. I think the average age is 40 plus.
Again, would be the obvious question. They can, right? If they could do it then, they can do it again. Secondly, the ballistic missiles being neutralized, they're still firing them. And in fact, they're going a lot further than anyone believed possible, because the Iranians clearly were lying about their capability. But when they start to reach distances as two did last week, which means they could potentially get to European cities like London and Paris and so on, that doesn't say to me that their ballistic capability has been neutralized. It says to me it's alive and kicking and a lot more dangerous potentially than we realize. Now, a lot of it may have been destroyed.
Okay, let me put that point for later. Piers Morgan has a point. This could easily escalate to a world war. Russia has a pathetic army, but their army is supposed to be numerous. They're not supposed to be great. Same with China, but China really has some crazy technology. They recently made a artificial sun, and that doesn't mean they made something as hot as the sun. The U.S. could do that, but they powered up something into a sun, basically, or maybe it was energy to a sun. No, but if I remember, it was the first time in history it was made. I don't even know. It was the same week during Deep Seek's thing. Whatever. Oh yeah, he was talking about the Iranians uprising. Yeah, there's no point in doing that. I understand that there's cruelty from the Iranian government, but if you think Israel and the Americans are going to be better, you're dumb. Obviously, I don't think they're gonna mess with the culture too much. It's not like they're gonna lift the abilities to make OnlyFans. There was a lot of gooners, not a lot of gooners is too nice of a word. A lot of degenerates on Twitter saying, "Oh, there's finally gonna be Iranian OnlyFans." No, that's not how it works. A lot of the Middle East was owned by the British, and they were owned by proxies of the banker investment firms and stuff like that, and the bankers themselves and the banking systems. But that's not how it works. Porn is still illegal there. I think they're just gonna lose a lot of agencies. The same way Egypt and all the other countries are losing agency by depositing puppets to those states, and they're all gonna get genocided anyways. So they're basically Judas ghosts to everybody else in those countries, and I think Iran is not part of the greater Israel, at least not that much. But I think they are maybe like the west side of it, but not the whole country. That's my point. And yeah, the main goal of Israel is to genocide the entirety of the Middle East and become a global superpower. And the purpose of Israel is to be like a geopolitical tool of the banking investment firm that works outside of the proxies of international law and law, because that's the capital's end goal. The capital's end goal is to consume and to dominate. It's the language of abuse, and it's endorsed because it makes a lot of money. Ever since Israel started their 2-year genocide, they have, and they're still continuing. They're trying to finishing it through rebuilding it and committing an exodus in the Palestinian territories, which is the entirety of Israel. Basically, their stock market jumped like 300% since starting the genocide in Palestine, and they're now going to other countries. They're going after Jordan. They're annexing the north side. They're gonna try to do Egypt all the way down there, and the countries there are complete traitors. They're not going to fight back. They're going to do a lot of stand down orders, similar to October 7th.
in Israel. And I mean, Israel has been the one true friend of the Iranian people. And, now we have America on our side as well, thanks to President Trump and his administration. But we're very grateful for all of this that's happening. And, with respect to what President Trump is doing right now, he made it very clear at the beginning, he wants nothing less than unconditional surrender. So what I think is happening here is President Trump is setting up these negotiations in a way for this, if it actually is Ghalibaf, he's setting it up so that Ghalibaf can surrender. And then once Ghalibaf and, whatever leadership is left surrenders, that's when I believe he's going to give the signal to the Iranian people to go back and reclaim the country, because the IRGC will not fight back. That's how I see this playing out.
Okay, Brian McGuinness, welcome to Uncensored. Now, you served in the United States Marine Corps from 2000 to 2004. You opposed this war, and in fact, you were forcibly removed from a Senate hearing after shouting, "Nobody wants to fight for Israel." We've got a clip here. You actually had your arm broken, I believe, in the process of your protest here. Have we got that clip?
No one wants to fight for Israel!
This is really going to test if, I don't think he's an op, but the girl that was speaking, she was fucking insane.
On the head of a Marine!
Friend of Israel is a friend of the Iranian people. No, bro, they're going to rape everything.
A U.S. Senator
They're capitalists first, humans
Marine.
second. People don't notice that. Don't want to accept that.
So, Brian, first of all, how are you? And was your arm actually broken?
Well, my arm was stuck between those two doors, and as you can see from the video, my arm broke. I'm not trying to talk about it too much because I'm in the middle of the legal process, but I would really like to be able to share my sentiments related to that protest of mine. I still feel, very concerned about what we're committing American troops to, the cause we are. It's for the Greater Israel Project, and a key aspect of that project is to weaken the West so Israel can be the dominant power in the Middle East. Our bases over there are getting hit with missiles, killing 13 Americans so far, erasing American presence while elevating Israel's dominance, and we're spending $2 billion a day increasing our national debt, all while attacking a country Joe Kent clearly stated posed no imminent threat, and that we're doing it because of Israel's influence. Bring our tax dollars back to the Americans who pay them. Instead, the investor class, which includes the Epstein class, profit while the working class watch their sons and daughters, moms and dads, go fight for Israel. Israelis believe they're God's chosen, while our elected officials send them our troops and treasure. I believe this is wrong, and America doesn't want this.
I mean, there are lots of people who say a similar version of what you just said. And as I said, what Marco Rubio said clearly
that bitch
pointed
that was
to
talking was crazy.
a lot of Israeli influence on this decision to attack Iran. But other people say, look, the United States is the biggest superpower in the history of planet Earth. Donald Trump is not a shrinking violet. These decisions were made by America and Donald Trump because they also believed it was in the interests of the United States. I mean, I think that is probably true. It doesn't mean there wasn't influence or encouragement by the Israelis to go along with it. But ultimately, the responsibility for American involvement surely lies with the United States and the president, doesn't it?
I think it's a bad idea to believe Donald Trump, a businessman, a man of poor character, over Joe Kent, the National Counterintelligence Director. And he specifically stated why he resigned, because he cannot in good faith continue to support this war that does not, against Iran, they did not pose any imminent threats, and it was caused by Israeli lobby influence.
Okay, just hold fire panel for a moment. Let me join now by Shushank Joshi. He's the defense editor at The Economist. Welcome to Uncensored. I need you to do what I've been struggling to do, which is make some kind of sense about all the strategy here that's going on. I mean, take our own country, for example. Initially, the UK Prime Minister said, well, we're not going to allow even the bases that we share with the Americans to be used. Then within 36 hours, complete U-turn on that. Now, I think they can use some of the bases, but only if it's for defensive and not aggressive reasons. Not quite sure how you take part in defensive bombing. I'm sure someone can explain it to me. So that's just the UK, and you've got similar kind of contradictory positions of a lot of other countries too. What is happening here? I mean, from a defence perspective, what is going on?
Yeah, good afternoon, Piers. Shall I start with the UK side? Does that make sense? I think what's happening is that the belief in government is this is a really needless, counterproductive and harmful war that is destroying the global economy and will result in Iran perhaps emerging more ideological, more radical, and more of a threat than it did before. But of course, they can't say that because they also, quite understandably, like any prime minister, have the relationship with the United States to manage. And the United States is the most important ally of the UK, whoever it's led by. It's absolutely critical to our defense capabilities, our intelligence cooperation, not to mention our nuclear deterrent. And so you've got to manage that relationship. And so whilst they think it's a terrible war and a terrible idea, and that bombing Iranian forces, even along the Persian Gulf coastline, will not open the Strait of Hormuz, only an end to the conflict will reopen Hormuz, they nonetheless have to be seen to be cooperative. And that's why I think you have Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, insisting Europeans are in support of this, when he knows, of course, they aren't. This is very simple. You might call it cynical diplomacy, but equally you could argue that it's fairly pragmatic management of an alliance.
And in terms of the way that the American and Israeli combined military have gone about this, do you think they really underestimated the way that the Iranians would respond so adeptly in terms of strangling the global economy by using the Strait of Hormuz as a weapon?
Starmer said he wouldn't interfere, but I think those defensive bases got bombed, if I remember correctly. Like, what did you expect? And, the British were also part of the Palestinian genocide. They were using their jets. They were using their drones. They're using their tech. They're using the spyware from the British. So, yeah, this is not, as the Canada senator said, that this is a large product to, increase money. This is a colonization project, and one of the first parts is to commit genocide and to overthrow the current governments that they have to make a profit out of it. And as I said, they are capitalist first, human second, and this is a good illustration of it. They would rather kill their own men, send them to, the worst of it is that the public is never going to see the profits from this. These wars are funded by our taxes, but they're profited privately. And in 50 years, not even 50, in 20 years, if things are reversed, and we have to pay back, colonization taxes, for example, like we did for the colonies, like we did to India, we would pay out of the taxpayers' payout, not the companies who actually endorsed, controlled, or racketeered for this. As they say, war is a racket.